بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نكمل في الجزء الثاني من Public Health Code of Ethics. نكمل في عنوان Guidance for Ethical Analysis، التحليل الأخلاقي أو تحليل الأمور التي يجب أن نأخذ فيها قرار من ناحية أخلاقية عند ممارسة الصحة العامة أو طب المجتمع. Ethical analysis can help public health practitioners and organizations assess what they should do and why. Sometimes values and ethical obligations conflict, resulting in the need for common ground and seek integrity, sustaining compromise. Resolving ethical tensions does not mean finding the right answer, rather it means searching for a morally appropriate way forward, all things considered. يعني كثير من الأمور يجب أخذها بعين الاعتبار, or many things to be considered when trying to resolve ethical tensions. It means that this way of handling things may not be the right way from the point of view of other people or population and so on, or other policy makers. So it has to be discussed, or all things considered. Ethical analysis of proposed or contemplated public health actions involves four important components. إذن هذا التحليل الأخلاقي أو تحليل المشاكل أو الأمور التي بحاجة إلى قرار ربما يعارضه كثير من الأطراف, contemplated, determination of the public health goals of the proposed action. Yani we need to do this because of these goals. It's not for the sake of our interests, it's for these goals. Identification of the ethically relevant facts and uncertainties. While we are determined to achieve these goals, some of the ethically relevant facts or uncertainties occur, and we have to handle them as appropriate as possible. Analysis of the implications of the action for the health and right of affected individuals and communities. I will give example. For example, those who are affected with some infections that need to be detained or put in isolation, and this will affect or be conflicted with their human rights to be, but we are looking at the big goal, which is preserving the community health. Analysis of how the proposed action fits with core or within core public health values, either whether this action will go or not with the public health values. Such an analysis involves assessing the best available factual evidence, as we said before. Evidence means a lot of data, a lot of analysis, understanding the lived experience of affected stakeholders, and thinking explicitly through how the moral justification for the proposed public health action or program can best be publicly justified and explained. So, how conflicts between different goals and values should be resolved? إذا كان هناك اختلاف بين الgoals والpublic health values should be resolved. How? Through serious discussion of considerations in a deliberative decision-making process. Public health practitioners can strive to ensure that authority and power in public health will not be exercised in ways that are arbitrary, discriminatory, or otherwise abusive of the public trust. Okay, there is a conflict between the goals and values, or maybe the community values. So we need to make a very useful decision or discussion to go to reach a deliberative, which means a lot of discussion, based on a lot of discussion, decision-making process. your opinion, my opinion, their opinion, and so on, we come to a common ground. Ensure that authority and power will not be exercised with that arbitrarily. It means this is the way we see it. No discussion. This is not good. Discriminatory. You say those people I don't like, so I will vote against them. Otherwise, abusive. There are 8 considerations that should arise in virtually any setting where people or where public health interventions and policies are planned and significant decisions concerning such interventions and policies are made. Let's go through them. First, permissibility or permissibility. Excuse me. It means that would the action being considered be ethically wrong even if it were to have a good outcome? The action ethically considered be ethically wrong even if it were to have a good outcome. The objective is to distinguish conduct between conduct that is morally permitted from conduct that is morally prohibited. An action is often, but not exclusively, judged to be morally acceptable based on these factors. So the objective is to reach morally permitted action. When it is morally permitted or acceptable in these factors, based on these factors. The consequences of the action, we will consider the consequences. We will consider the nature of the action. We will consider also the motivation or intention of the action. Consider the parameters of the law. We will consider also the needs, rights, and well-being of individuals and society. So, evaluating the consequences of a proposed action or decision must consider the social and cultural context of the action. An action based or might have permissible consequences but be prohibited because of social, cultural, legal, historical experience and consensus. For example, if we look at the impermissible, which is, it means that an acceptable action is the torture. Discrimination based on race, gender, ethnicity, or functional impairment. These are impermissible actions. So we don't need to go through impermissible actions or unacceptable for the human being actions, but we have to consider the consequences, the nature, the motivation, the law, and also the parameters of the individuals and society. The second is the respect. Would the proposed action be demeaning or disrespectful to individuals and communities, even if it benefited their health? It means that respect supports human dignity with dealings, interactions, and relationships. These considerations remain relevant even when there exists disparity in needs or resources among the parties involved. It is particularly important to safeguard justice and equity, solidarity, dignity of vulnerable people such as those of young age or cognitive disability who may not be able to fully participate in deliberation or give consent or even assent. So we have to go through or to understand the respect. Respect is based on human rights. It means that you have to respect all things regarding the individual. Everything. It means that you have to think in a justifiable, in justice, in equity, preserving the dignity, the ideas, the beliefs, everything. This is the respect. Reciprocity, it means how we done, have we done what is reasonable to compensate the potential harms and losses that the proposed action imposes on individuals and communities. يعني في كثير من الأحيان احنا بناخذ قرار وما ندرس ايش التبعات لهذا القرار. consequences of such action. We have to be reciprocity. It means you have to indicate that social life should reflect mutual exchanges and cooperation rather than unilateral burden. متبادل. Reciprocity, it means obligates us to relieve the burden of adhering to public health policy. يعني مش فئة معينة تتضرر والباقي يتفرج ما يصيبه شيء. When a public authority requires individuals and communities to contribute to or participate in an important communal undertaking, it is mandatory that on that authority to provide the means necessary to ensure that such contributions are not unduly or reasonably burdensome. يعني أوكي، هذه الفئة من الأطباء، ربما من التمريض، من العاملين، منظفين، العاملين في الجيش، العاملين في الأمن، كل ما يعني أي فئة تم أخذ القرار أنه والله يكون عليها مثلا عبء معين، يجب أن يكون هناك دراسة وافية حتى ما يكون في unduly or unreasonably burdensome فقط لهذه الفئة، عبء عليها فقط. For example, if public health subjects individuals to compulsory quarantine or social distancing measures تباعد والحجز, it is the ethical responsibility of public health and other officials and agencies to provide appropriate medical assistance, housing conditions, nutrition, access to outside communication, and other human rights protections throughout the course of their isolation. Effectiveness. This principle means that is it reasonable to expect, based on best available evidence and past experience, that the proposed action would achieve its stated health goals. Effective. اوكي، انت اخذت هذا القرار، قلت والله انا بدي اعمل بالطريقه هذه، هل كان هذا فعال كما يجب انه اشتغل وعمل المطلوب؟ Once the planned goals of a proposed public health action are determined to be morally permissible and given the best information presently available, a proposed public health action or decision should be able to achieve its intended public health goals. We understand that for the sake of better health for the community, you are taking this action, but is it really going to work perfectly? This is the question. Action for its own sake without a reasonable likelihood of effective success is not ethically justified. For example, in an epidemic situation, especially one involving an unfamiliar pathogen or a grave infectious disease, measures involving quarantine or restriction on travel or assembly might be considered for political reasons, even when the evidence of their effectiveness in containing the epidemic is weak. على الرغم من أنه الإيفيدنس المقدمة ضعيفة في فعالية هذا الإجراء، لكن زي ما حكينا من قبل a lot of dimensions should be considered ومنها political reasons. Since substantial human, environmental, and economic costs intended or unintended, current or long-term, are associated with such measures, lack of evidence for their effectiveness would provide one ethical argument against their use. لكن زي ما حكينا, this is for other reasons including the policy. المبدأ الخامس, Responsible use of scarce resources. Would the proposed action demonstrate good stewardship and deserve the trust that the public has invested in public health practitioners? ما معنى stewardship? It is the general ethical value that stands for the responsible planning and management of resources. So it is a general ethical value. Virtually every public health action, particularly those for which difficult ethical judgments must be made, involves the use of scarce resources such as human skills, talent, time, medical equipment, supplies, or other infrastructure, natural resources, funds that could be directed to other activities. Even if permissible and effective on its own terms, ethical decision making requires consideration of whether a given action merits expenditure of resources in relation to other needs or health goals that require attention now or in the foreseeable future. You have to think deeply or extensively when you make decisions regarding the scarce resources, because if you get zero resources, what would you do? For example, a possible future health emergency can be less devastating if large quantities of medical supplies or equipment such as antivirals or ventilators are stockpiled in reserve. من قبل ما تصير المشاكل تكون عندك هذه الستوكبايل في الريزيرف يعني مخزنة. But those stockpiled resources could go unused for a long period and even expire, while other ongoing public health programs and services are underfunded. فهي معادلة وربما يكون فيها القرار صعب، ولكن يجب أن يكون مبني على دراسة تتعلق بالأولويات. Proportionality. Would the proposed action demonstrate that public health practitioners are using their power and authority carefully and with humbleness? Proportionality involves assessments of the relative effects, positive and negative benefits and costs of an action or a decision, provided that those benefits and costs are distributed in equitable way. Conversely, a disproportionate action would be one that involves a very small chance of significant benefit to a few or the cost of widespread deprivation or harm to many. يعني يا إما إنك بتنفع مجموعة من الناس تحرم الباقي، يا إما بتحرم الباقي كلهم وبتنفع مجموعة، وهكذا، أو تحرم المجموعة هذه تنفع المجموعة الكبيرة. فيبدو لي أنه هذه المعادلة دائما تكون بايست إلا إذا وجد نظام عادل يشمل أو يعني يضمن تكافؤ الفرص وتكافؤ توزيع هذه المصادر. Public health actions should adopt the least restrictive alternatives that will meet the public health goals. For example, safety goals can at times justifiably override other values such as personal liberty, but harm or risk of harm should be thought of temporally and considering both the current and future generations. All right. Accountability and transparency. Would the proposed action tolerate close ethical scrutiny and be justified by valid reasons that the general public will understand؟ اللي هي المسؤولية والمحاسبة. هل نستطيع أن نحاسبك؟ وهذه البروبوز أكشن عنده أو حتى المنظمة هذه أو المسؤولية هذه أو whatever قادر على اتباع نظام يكون فيه النقاش الحاد أو الانتقاد أو ما شابه ذلك مقبول ويؤدي إلى منفعة. Public health practice relies on the support and cooperation of individuals and communities which require trust, transparency and accountability. Accountability اللي هي الاعتراف بالمسؤولية. This can involve explaining actions and motives, giving an account of the reasoning and evidence behind a program, and demonstrate respect for affected communities and stakeholders. This can help the public understand the difficulty and seriousness of the public health decision making, even if they disagree with it. Transparency, especially in emergency situations, protecting individual privacy and avoiding public panic might be overriding considerations as an ethical reasoning. Transparency is always a good ethical and professional practice and a hallmark of learning organizations. Okay, 8. Public participation. In deciding on a proposed action, have all potentially affected stakeholders had a meaningful and equal opportunity to participate. العدل أيضا في إنه الجميع يشارك في هذه المشاكل. Public participation refers to the meaningful involvement of members of the public in public health research, decision making, planning, policy, and practice. Public or community participation should ensure that participants and decision makers alike are mutually engaged in discussion and informed, not by public service announcement, social media campaign, or marketing. إذا يعني هؤلاء اللي أنت مهتم فيهم اللي هم ستيك هولدرز بنسميهم اللي هم المشاركين، المجموعات والمؤسسات سواء الحكومية أو غيرها من المجتمع المحلي أو المهتمين بهذا الشأن، يكون عندهم علم بالريسيرش، بالديسيجن ميكينج، بالبلاننج، بوليسي، هذه الأمور، مش إنه تجيهم الأخبار من الببليك ميديا and social media. So or especially decisions that affect the trust of minority and marginalized communities, or that are highly sensitive and divisive, require intensive effort to involve affected stakeholders. Public participation can enhance the legitimacy, transparency, and justice of decision making and build trust in public institutions. They provide participants with time for discussion, reflection, co-learning to promote dialogue that identifies the ethical, psychological, social, cultural, economic impacts and difficult trade-offs of decisions. It promotes finding collective solutions, supported decisions, and providing direct feedback to decision makers. أتمنى في يوم من الأيام أن نجد مثل هذا البراكتس موجود عندنا، اللي هو يكون في discussion, reflection, co-learning, dialogue really، مش أشخاص معينين فقط هم اللي بيشاركوا والباقي يتفرج وما له علاقة بكل ما يحدث. أوكي. Alright. الآن مع ethical policies and practices used to conduct and disseminate assessment of public health status and public health issues facing communities. Cross-disciplinary collaboration to define community problems and identify causal factors or social determinants of health. إذن هذه عبارة عن guidelines for ethical policies، كيف نفكر وكيف نقوم ب disseminate assessment of public health status. أول شيء اللي هو cross-disciplinary collaboration، تعاون ما بين اختصاصات كثيرة to define community problems. احنا أول شيء نحاول نفهمه وهو ethically كثير مطلوب اللي هو define community problems، وإذا كان في causal factors or social determinants of health مرتبطة بهذه community problems. وأيضا هذا يتطلب engaging, empowering and training community members to conduct and disseminate health assessments. Also, balancing received needs with expressed and expert defined needs to improve community health. أحيانا بنسميهم perceived needs مقابل اللي هو اللي perceived أو demands وفي فرق بيناتهم. النيدز اللي هي ما يطلبه الجمهور أو يحتاجه بالفعل ويكون معرف من قبل الإكسبرتس، ولكن الديماند زي ما يطلبه وهل هو بالفعل priority ولا لا. إذا بعد ذلك بعد ما نشوف النيدز prioritizing the health problems and disseminate relevant findings. الأولويات safeguarding public health information to prevent any harm to individuals or communities, وpromoting reflexivity to minimize the influence of biases on the research process. Also, the ethical policies and practices to investigate health problems and environmental health hazards. هذا من ضمن أيضا مسؤوليات الببليك هيلث. فما هي الethical policies؟ أول شيء detecting and recognizing public health threats promptly and efficiently, avoiding conflicts of interest that could interfere with the willingness to acknowledge public health threats, ensure that investigators use resources efficiently and effectively, ensure data validity, account for limitations of available data, determine statistical thresholds for defining significance, and take steps to assist others who use the data, including the media and policymakers, so they will not draw inappropriate conclusions regarding cause and effect. Also, protecting the privacy and confidentiality of individuals when gathering data, collecting only data elements and specimens necessary for disease control or protection, removing personal identifying information from the data set as soon as it is no longer needed. اللي هي privacy وأيضا حفظ وسرية المعلومات. Balancing the public's needs for information with the possibility that an investigators or investigations results will create excessive burdens or stigma for populations, groups, or individuals, or cause other adverse outcomes. All right.